Well, it's sort of election season, and maybe we'll have a new government within the next few months. I think whether we have a new government or not, I think it's probably true that we'll have a new transport minister.
Yeah.
Stirling, what do you think of these guys? Yeah, they got a difficult job. Yeah, their hands are tied by the
Mike,
Treasury.
look, it seems to me with government, if you get to know something too well, they move you out.
Yeah.
I mean, we had Barbara Castle. She couldn't drive, but she became Minister of Transport, and I presume she did a fairly good job for a while.
Yeah.
Then they said, my God, she's learning too much, move her out.
Yeah.
And it seems each time we get somebody in, when they once get to grip with it, either it's too much or they don't want them in it.
Now, what was Barbara Castle famous for? She
70-mile-an-hour limit.
That's right. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
she brought that in.
And this is brought in by somebody who doesn't drive.
Yes.
Says it all, really, doesn't it?
I think it does. I don't see how you can cap that one. But the point is there is so much that should be done and needs to be done. You know, there really is. I think it's an enormous job, a terribly important job, an all-encompassing thing, because most people drive. We've got, what, 25 million odd cars?
Yep.
And I don't know how many licenses. And we're all touched by the car, even if we don't like it,
right,
or by transport. And so there are an awful lot of things I think
Yeah, and let's not forget that even those people that don't drive, and there is a minority of adults that don't drive, they're regular users of cars. They might be using their partner's car. They might be in the passenger seat of their partner's car
or on a
every
bus.
day.
Sure.
Quite. Or a taxi. I mean, people talk about public transport. You know, taxis are public transport. They're motor cars as well. So as you say, we're all touched by it. Seems to me, though, it's quite simple that it doesn't have the priority it deserves, does it? I mean, everybody talks about chancellors and defence ministers and all the rest of it. The transport minister's job seems to me one of the most important jobs in Britain and should have a higher profile.
I agree. I think it's very, very important. I think it's a person who needs a fairly big budget. I think things ought to be done a tremendous amount, not only to the roads but to the laws and so on. And I think that somebody's got to take the bull by the horns and get moving on it.
Yeah.
I mean, I personally feel they ought to consider turning left on red lights after stopping.
Yep.
In America, it works extremely well, right on in most states. I don't think all states, but I think there are quite a few things like that.
No, that's a good one, because just to explain that to people who are not familiar with it, you come to a red light in the States. Remember, you're driving on the other side of the road. If there's nothing coming, despite the fact that it says red light and you shouldn't go, you can actually nip around the corner, not cross the junction, but just turn right. In this country, it would be, of course, turning left on a red. And it works very well. I've never seen anything approaching a near accident in that situation. It's a simple thing, could be brought in tomorrow. It will make the world an easier place, or it will make Britain an easier place to live in.
Yeah, but Mike, look.
Am I being idealistic?
Yes, you are, certainly. But we have a roundabout.
So naive.
Now, a roundabout should work where people come in, but now we have traffic lights on roundabouts.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that defeats the whole idea of a roundabout.
Yeah, quite.
I can't. And when you've got a T-junction, I don't see why you can't keep one lane flowing if you put a divider down. I mean, there are so many things, you know, that could be done on the road without too much expense, and they keep building these great big islands in the middle and taking the road away from us motorists and saying this is a bus lane. And then when we have a bus lane, people don't read the sign.
No.
How many times have you been on a bus lane when people are out in the middle when they shouldn't be, because it's no longer a bus lane?
I mean, quite often the bus lane only exists between, say, 7 in the morning till 10 in the morning. And that means for the other 21 hours of that day, you can use them.
Yeah, but they don't.
Of course, if you go hacking up the inside lane, up that bus line, and you overtake somebody in the inside, the chances are you're going to be done for inappropriate overtaking.
I must say, I don't know if you would, but
it's grey area.
You could, grey area,
Yeah,
very grey,
quite.
very grey.
But I mean, it just seems to me that it's a simple subject that's made very, very complicated. If you said to most motorists out there in the field, living day to day with all the problems of congestion and all the rest of it, so much of it could be made much simpler. I mean, for example, an investment of 50 quid, 100 quid by painting an instruction on the road, it costs nothing. It's there for years. It could create such a better driving environment, and yet they won't spend that 50, 100 quid by painting that sign on the road. Or whatever.
No, well, it's the same with road signs, isn't it? With street signs and all those sort of things. There's no continuity.
No.
If only we had to look at one particular point to see where we were, that would help people. They'd know where they were or where they're trying to go. The road signs is another thing that I think this country is not very good at, that's for sure.
It has to be said, though, in fairness, even countries like America, which have great signs because they have signs that you can, you know, are so unambiguous. I mean, they have signs like...
Yeah, but they change the names of a road in the middle of the road.
They do that.
You start off with one that suddenly becomes another one.
Yeah,
That's a bad
and
deal.
I tell you the other thing they are terrible at. If you go to somewhere like Los Angeles Airport, for example, from downtown LA, there will be absolutely no signs for the airport until you arrive at the airport and you can physically see it 20 yards away from you, and there'll be a sign then saying
Yeah.
LA Airport.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they're pretty bad at that. So to put Britain into context, I think, you know, we're bad at road signs, and so are our foreign competitors.
But we ought to be able to be better. We could be better.
Yeah, I mean, we're improving communications in all walks of life. This is the age of communication improvements, and yet nobody's doing really any great thing on road signs.
No, but we see until we get a Minister of Transport who gives these things, well, not necessarily priority,
Yeah.
but brings them to the forefront and puts somebody in charge
Yeah.
of doing. I mean, they've just done a thing at Hyde Park Corner, which quite honestly has backed up traffic like 200 or 300 yards.
Yeah.
And I called up the head of traffic, and he came out and he said, "Oh, well, I'll get somebody to call you."
Yeah.
That was months ago. Nobody's called me,
Yeah.
and it's still there.
I think I've got an answer actually, and that's I should do the job. Would you?
I'll second you. I'll second you.
You reckon I could cope with it?
I would be happy to see you try.
Well, let me tell you, off the top of my head, first thing we'll do is we'll review speed limits. We'll do things like improving signs.
Graded licences.
Graded licences, insurance discs on windscreens.
Coloured cat's eyes for when you're coming up to a major road.
That's good. And the other one, of course, is a VIP lane for me and Stirling. Just every road in the country, a little lane that we can bomb up, just like those princes and those kings do in Thailand or wherever.